All right, so here we go. One last question. I got to ask this. So, if I can ask, you got the Golden Girls behind you.
I do.
It's cool. I was like, I'm looking and I
Thank
was going, wait a
you.
second, that's Betty White. And I'm
It
like,
is. And Dorothy and
yeah, that's so cool.
Blanche.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's such a conversation starter, even though it didn't start out like that, but like everything in this house was gray, which is so not my personality. And so I saw those online. I was like, oh my God, I have to have them.
That's cool.
Like,
That's very cool. All right,
thank
here we go.
you.
Well,
All right.
that's very neat. So I can imagine it's a conversation starter because I had to ask. I'm like, oh, before we
No,
finish, I can ask this.
they're
So
amazing. I love all four of them. So
very cool. Dr. Tara Williams is the founder of Innovative Collegiate Consultants and a tenured chemistry professor at College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita, California. With a PhD in synthetic inorganic chemistry from the University of Sussex, she has spent over 20 years teaching and more than a decade supporting neurodivergent students as they transition from K through 12 to college. Her team specializes in executive functioning coaching and academic support grounded in universal design principles to help students build confidence and self-advocacy. I knew I was going to do that. And advocacy. There we go. All right, I can do this. And self advocacy. Oh my gosh. And self advocacy. Advocacy. Oh my gosh. I seriously turned into my dad. And and self advocacy. Oh my goodness. I'm going to try this again. To help students build confidence and self advocacy. Advocacy. Why do I struggle with this? I'm sorry about this.
You're totally fine. You're making me laugh.
To help students build confidence and self advocacy and self advocacy. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm struggling so much here. So one more time. To help students build confidence and self advocate. How about that?
That's perfect.
Dr. Williams is currently writing a book about her educational journey and her work with neurodivergent college students, set for release next year. Tara, welcome to the show and say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Stephen, for having me on.
Well, great to have you here. And first, I got to ask you this because, all right, I took organic chemistry. I took, you know, something around the idea of inorganic chemistry. And not that I was trying to, but a couple times I accidentally set the lab on fire. Not like the entire lab, but my
Just
station because I
your
didn't listen.
space.
Yes, I didn't listen to the instructions about not putting the little splints in the trough that was built in probably the
Uh,
1930s.
yes, yes.
But with that being said, oh my goodness, you have a PhD in synthetic inorganic chemistry. That's cool. And you're a tenured chemistry professor. So what made you say you want to do that?
Okay, so I'm not sure if you've ever seen Son-in-Law, where he has like five different majors. It's Pauly Shore, maybe. You haven't seen it. It's great.
No, I
But
haven't.
he's from the 90s, I would say. And he's had like 16 majors. So that was me. I back in the early 2000s when I was in college, you didn't have to have a major when you applied. So I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I was a poli sci major. And when I first went in, and then I was like, wow, archaeology is really cool. I'm going to be an archaeology major. And then I was really fortunate back then that I had a friend who was working at a law firm. And so she got me like a little job working there, like a runner. And I did that for about 3 months and I hated it. It's like, oh my gosh, is this life where you're inside all day long and you're like filing papers and things like that? And I was just like, this is not for me. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just the private corporate side, right? So I worked for the public defender's office. And then I also did not enjoy that for like obviously social reasons. So I was like, okay, I am going to be a criminology major because CSI was so big, you know? And then I found out then that, oh, if you want to do like a really be a crime scene investigator, you have to do forensics, which is so I switched my major as a junior to chemistry, which was hugely different. I hadn't done math in 2 years since high school.
Nice.
So it was a very big climb, but I made some really good friends my first semester of all trudging through it. And so that sort of, changed my whole perspective on science and the fact that, I'd always hated science in high school. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this. I really enjoyed it. And then when it came to grad school, I was looking at forensics programs, and my advisor was like, hey, you can pay like $100,000. That was back then, to get a master's in forensics, or you can get a PhD in chemistry. So I was like, I'm going to apply for that, and it's free because we always need PhD chemists, and I am first generation. My parents didn't go to college. So I had no idea that that meant that I had to find something that no one else has ever done. So that was a big experience at the
Very cool.
beginning. Um, but yeah, I got into a PhD program at the University of Tennessee. And I was there for 2 years, and I left with my advisor who was British when he left the school to go back to England, and I spent 3.5 years at the University of Sussex. So it was a very long and difficult road, but I gotta say, my people, I was lucky because like we were all working a million hours and frustrated, and it's just a very hard degree, but we had each other, and that was the most important thing. And I still have those friends to this day that I've made in chemistry. So
That's so cool. And I can imagine you have those friends because and not trying to downplay anything
no,
or say anything bad, but there's a reason why I didn't major in chemistry because I'm glad I did okay. I spent a lot of time on the weekends trying to figure out what I didn't know, and my favorite activity, whichever part of chemistry this falls under, was taking a substance and breaking it down and trying to figure out what the substance was. I thought that was cool.
I mean, organic, I didn't enjoy organic either, so don't feel bad. That's why I'm an
That's
inorganic chemist. But like organic is like a puzzle, right? Like you learn in the first semester, you learn all the reactions. In the second semester, it's like this is you start here, you go here, you got to know all the steps, right? And my friends that were in a synthetic organic lab, like watching them, like having to go through the steps, but not knowing how to get there, it was fascinating, right? And to do like what we would call like natural product synthesis, which is that, right? Like finding out what works. Like sometimes you get through like 4 or 5 steps in a PhD, which means you spend 5 years, or in case of England, 3 years, and go 4 or 5 steps forward. So
wow.
that's when I try to tell people that a PhD is just in chemistry is just there's so much stuff that doesn't work. Like sometimes you're just like, oh my God, this is never going to work. Every day it doesn't work. But then when it does work, you're like, oh my God, now I have so much work. So it's just kind of like this like circle. But also, I'm going to say, Steven, you just didn't have the right professor because I think that chemistry can be fun for sure if you, and like can be easier if you have like the right people explaining things.
That's cool. I can imagine so. So definitely imagine that because yeah, that was that would have had a huge definitely had a huge impact because it was yeah uh,
No,
kind
for
of
sure.
random
You're
from that
talking
one,
about a science that people, you can't see it. Like
right?
we're telling students, like all of this exists, but you can't see it.
Yeah,
So try to
exactly.
imagine it,
That's
and so that's really difficult, like versus biology, where like a lot of stuff we can see, right? We have
right,
microscopes,
right.
we can see things. So I think that that's what makes the beginning of chemistry so hard is like I trust us, it's there. So we do as much as we can, like in our courses at my college to make it where we can see it, right? As much as we can, because that's so important, especially for visual learners, right?
Oh yeah,
Like if
yeah,
you can't see it, it doesn't make any sense to you.
very much so, very much so. So cool stuff. Well, that's so neat that that's the area that you're in and the route that you took. So that's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And
Thank you.
well, all right. So you're the founder and owner of Innovative Collegiate Consultants Incorporated. So tell us what its purpose is and what drove you to create that company.
So the purpose is basically to help students have success and whatever that means. If that's getting better grades, if that's gaining confidence, if that's working, helping them with self advocate because that's such an important process that we're going to have throughout life. I would say just having a student that's happy is my favorite thing, right? Um, But in general, like part of that PhD program we were just talking about, I had to start teaching when I was 22 because that was part of my PhD. That's how that was funded. And going directly from the classroom to being in front of the classroom is really scary. Like you feel like you don't know anything. Talking about imposter syndrome. And especially back then, I looked very young. Like some of my students would be like older, and they'd be like, "You look like my kid." I'm like, like
Right.
could be your age, I guess. I don't know. Um, but learning from that, like immediately being in a classroom, you sort of learn like different students truly need different things. And I sort of saw that throughout, and what kind of examples I could give, like when you're trying to work with someone and they're like, I just don't understand what you're saying. So, can I give an example from food? Can I give an example from life? Can we find an example online? And now, oh my goodness, 20 years later, all the technology is amazing. Like we have molecules, we can turn them, we can do all these things that we didn't have, right? Back then, they're like, here's a model kit and enjoy. So, so yeah, I mean, I think working with those students, I learned the difference in the way that people learned. And really looking at the way that I learned was so different. Um, and I think from there, when I moved to England, we taught in an international program for like a pre-med majors because it was like a 1 year, do this pre-med, see if you can get into med school. And there was people from all over the world. So once again, I had another experience I was like 25 at the time, and seeing how people all over the world learned and how differently we were taught and how differently we learn. So from there, I came back to the US and I was teaching again. And I really learned about things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and how those students just needed different things. Their brain just simply worked differently. And it really interested me in how can I become a better teacher by learning about these things. And from that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to help these students who are really struggling from this transition from K-12 to college because they always had help in K-12. They always had parent advocates, they had teacher advocates, they had people to remind them of things. And when you get to college, that all kind of becomes on you. And if the students weren't used to that, then they weren't necessarily asking for things that they needed, and I wanted to help with that.
That's cool. That's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks for explaining that. All right. So before we go any further, when you talk about neurodivergent and neurotypical students, what do you mean? Let's go ahead and put that out there.
So, I mean, there's a million different definitions, right? Like, I think for me, thinking about if you're neurotypical, then your brain works, I guess, how society thinks it should work, right? Whereas if you're neurodiverse, then your brain just works differently, right? We see that in things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, things we just spoke about, but seeing it not as a bad thing, right? Seeing it as your brain just works differently and you have different strengths and different things to overcome, right? I don't like the word weaknesses. So strengths and things to overcome. Whereas if you're neurotypical, people just see that as, oh, you don't have these things, therefore your brain works fine, right?
Gotcha. And that's what, and I appreciate you sharing what you think of when you use those terms so that we're all on the same table. Because like you said, there are some different versions out there of what
Yes.
they mean. So good stuff. All right. So let's dive into a couple of thoughts here. One of the things that, can be present is the thought that, um, learning doesn't mean the same thing, or that they may not be able to learn this or something if they fall into one of these categories. So, what myths about ADHD, autism, or dyslexia do you wish more people understood?
I mean, I think exactly what you just said, that they can't be successful in something academically, especially because they learn in a different way, right? We all learn in a different way, whether that's something that we've ever been told or not. Um, like I talk about this a lot. I talk about it in my book. Like I never understood what a cube was when I was younger. Like I had never, like people draw it on the board. I'm a terrible artist. I was like, I don't know what this is. This does not look like a cube. But every time someone would draw it, and I remember my geometry teacher put like a Rubik's cube in my hand, and I was like, oh my God, like I now understand what this means. I can physically count the sides. I can see the 3D version, right? And so for me, like I always struggled in math, which is funny because it's kind of what I do now. But I always struggled in math because I couldn't see it. It didn't make sense to me. It's like a flat surface that we're talking about with things that are not flat, that are geometric. And so for me, I think it's in that way that that teacher explained something to me that no one else had ever been able to explain to me. And I think it's the same thing with whether it's neurodivergent or neurotypical students, right? But especially with neurodivergent students, you may just have to explain things in 5 ways, right? So if it doesn't work, just instructionally, let's talk about it. Let's find an illustration, right? Let's visualize it. Let's do both. Let's visualize it while we talk about it. Or just a million different methods of we can teach things in different ways. It doesn't have to be this one way of thinking that everybody learns the same.
That's awesome. I love it. And fourth wall, real quick, because I may delete this afterwards, because it depends on how well I can state it without sounding um, dumb.
No, you're
You'll see when I talk about this. So I'm going to start, and we'll see
okay.
if I keep it or not.
Okay.
I'm a former high school principal, and in one of my schools, we had different, well, in all my schools, we had programs that were meant to transition from as they're learning how to help them, figuring out how to teach and work with students who learn differently. How's that? Does that work? Am I
Yes, that
making
looks
sense so
great.
far? Okay.
Yes.
They This one young man I'll never forget, and there are quite a few of these students that I'll never forget, but one of them that I'll never forget, his vocal skills were difficult, and I always remember how he said my name. But one of the coolest things was he saw patterns like there was no tomorrow, and he helped this organization, which is a worldwide corporation that exists on multiple continents, and they're constantly transferring their people from one place to another. And so in these big buildings that they have where they have phone lines and mail systems, the none of that stuff kept up with it. So they'd keep delivering mail to a cubicle that that person hadn't been in like, a year, as well
Okay.
as that phone would get messages to it and stuff like this, that that person was now over in Germany or something like
And they're
that.
never answering it or
And
checking it or
exactly. And basically he was explained that this is what he was going to help this colleague on figuring out how to make a system so that they could keep up with the comings and goings of people. He blew their minds. he, because he said, just let me look at this. And he did. And within a couple of days, oh my gosh, man, they were like, we've been dealing with this forever. And he had straightened it all out and he came up with a system in order to deal with, like, if Steve worked there one day and then Steve was gone in 2 weeks, that's, Steve would be eliminated from the system type thing.
for
And
sure. And that's where we're saying like that it's thinking differently, not necessarily not correctly, right? But
right.
thinking differently, and that was a problem that was easy for him to solve. Like he saw the answer through all of the things, right? Um, I think that you have a lot of amazing artists that are neurodivergent. You have a lot of scientists who are neurodivergent. You have a lot of I was going to say like musicians, things like that, right? Where there's like pattern recognition. Or I knew one of my friends has a son who's autistic. He can tell you the name of any country and the capital and what the flag looks like, and he's 11 years old.
Wow.
Like, and yeah, and because it's very interesting to him, so he's like, I want to learn all I can about this, right? It's that hyper focus of it's something that's interesting. They want to learn every single thing about it. So, I mean, and that's pattern recognition too, right? Oh, this flag has this and this has this. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an amazing way that neurodivergent people learn. I definitely couldn't do that. So,
I I definitely couldn't do this. And I would get not only bored, I'd get distracted by other things and go, what was I doing again?
I still feel like that. So,
But it's such an awesome concept that you talked about for people to understand that it's just a different way of learning or looking at the world as opposed to the right way or something
mhm.
like that. And I think that's so important in recognizing when we're talking about understanding how to let them do what they do well.
Yeah, like their strengths are their strengths, right? And rewarding that instead of saying, "Oh no, you need to fit in this box instead," right? Like we want you to do it this way. Where like what does it matter, right? And I
Right.
think also like in the last 10 to 15 years, I mean, I don't know if you have seen this as well, but like this generation is so much more understanding and like just is okay with so many more things that maybe other generations were not that way about, right? And I think it gives people a lot of students especially like a lot of ways to say, to self-advocate and be like, I don't get it, but if I can do it this way, why does it matter?
Right.
Instead of everybody has to do their math a certain way, everybody has to do their English a certain way. Like I think there's a lot more flexibility, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Oh, I see that quite a bit, quite a bit. So that's cool. All right, so let's talk about some skills and actual specifics here for a minute. What are executive functioning skills, and why do they matter for students? Because one of the things you do is help with this concept of transitioning into, post K through 12 and such. So let's talk about that.
So executive functioning skills are something that most people have to do every day, right? So it's time management, organization are the two biggest ones I would say is planning and time management, right? And neurodivergent students typically struggle in organization, time management, planning. Planning ahead, looking at a big project and it not being overwhelming. So sort of the things that when I say universal design, right? Like that's just a concept where like a ramp that was built for wheelchairs, right? So that's something that's great for people that are uniquely abled in that way, but also great for us when we don't want to walk up the stairs, right? So if you're not uniquely able, so when I say universal design, that's what I'm referring to. Is like something that works well for people with that are uniquely abled will also work well for everyone. So I know that for executive functioning, especially with technology, like we were just talking about, like your phone goes off, your email goes off, your learning management system goes off, right? Your Slack goes off, whatever it is, right? We have so many distractions, and students that are neurodivergent really struggle with time management in general, right? And now we've got 17 million distractions that we have every day. So we really work on that time management organization piece with them, and sort of breaking down a big assignment into chunks or breaking tasks into chunks. Sometimes there's an issue with working memory. So it's easier if we say, hey, like let's work on this piece first and then this piece and then this piece. We don't have to start, at A and go to Z. We can start at A and go to C. And then from there go to G. So I sort of look at it like that. But executive functioning skills are just basically the way that all of us or organize, time manage, or the when things that our brain plan like automatically do. But that some people really struggle with.
And it's so so right there. I think about when I was in undergrad, I had ways I did well in school, and I but really had to sit and focus on studying and spending time. And when I didn't, when I procrastinated and waited until the last minute or something like this, it really, you know, oh my gosh, it really hit me bad because I had to figure out how to overcome that. And so, uh, and if I just only started doing my processes before, but what was cool when I got in my undergrad, I run into a guy, we become friends. We're in a class that you had this insane amount of information you had to memorize. I mean, you literally had to. It was a humanities class that I'll never forget because you had. By the way, I'm really going to date myself when I say the next few words. All right, so when you went to that, we took this class, and in this humanities class, one of the things he wanted you to do was you looked at art from a particular time frame and genre, and so you had to learn the art, the genre, the time frame in which it was produced, and who did it.
Okay.
You also had to do the same thing with music from that same era. And so we had to go, this is really where I'm doing good until I get to this part, all right? Because when you get to this part, then you had to go in and listen to the recordings, these archival recordings, which in this day, you've got all kinds of
No, for
digital
sure.
type stuff. In those days, you had either tapes or you had records that you went into the library, into these listening rooms, and you sat there and listened to them. And oh my gosh, this was like, don't get me wrong, it was awesome listening to music and looking at the art and all that sort of stuff. But I did not have a system for dealing with the amount of questions that would be
Hmm.
asked on this type of
Yeah.
test. And I was talking to this gentleman who were in the same boat, and he said, I got some suggestions for you. And he had this way in which he color coded information, and he used these cards, these little index cards, and then he color coded the information. And then he had this process that, what this color stood for, what that color, as opposed to me highlighting all kinds of stuff in notes and stuff like this. And it was the coolest thing to have someone teach me a
Mhm.
study skill like that. So I want to use that to transition into not me, but to talk about, we were talking about these executive functioning skills. Why do you think many students struggle with things like time management, focus, and organization?
I mean, I think it's like we're talking about when we were in college. And when I was in college, as a chemistry major, it's a big change, a lot of different ways of studying, right? Um, and in chemistry, you cannot memorize, right? There's some of it you have to memorize, but it's that critical thinking piece of just problem after problem after problem. Because if the professor changes a variable and you don't know how to do the problem, then you don't really understand the problem, if that makes sense. Then you're
Okay.
memorizing, oh, this problem is like this. I'm solving for this. So, but I could sit in the library like by myself for like 6 hours and sit at a table and just have a solutions manual. That was who I was as a person. Could I do that now? Absolutely not. I can't stick 6 hours and do anything. Like I use timers just like I tell my students, which maybe we'll talk about with tips, but I just think the world has changed and the way that we are used to just having everything at our fingertips, right? It was like my friends and I talk about, when we were in high school and there was no cell phones, like you didn't have it. I had a cell phone my freshman year in college, but like how much simpler life was, right? No one knew where you were. Nobody like was keeping tabs, right? Especially in the small town I grew up in. And now it's like everybody has the expectation that you're getting back to them, that you've seen it, right? That we're working, and I'm just as guilty of this, but working at all hours all the time, right? And I think with technology, that's just created such a problem, right? And then if we think about um, students now, like we have learning management systems like Canvas or Blackboard or whatever the school uses, right? But sometimes you have a professor who is like different professors do different things. That's fine. That's, academia. But you have some that use Canvas, but they also send information in emails. They also put something, they also, so the students are expected to look at the syllabus, the email, whatever is in their learning management system. And then, oh, there's a Google Drive, right? That they now have to go to a separate site for. Maybe there's online homework that's a separate site. So in a class like that, that's 5 different places where students are looking for information, right? And I'm a professor myself. Like I'm not talking about it bad about any other professors, right? We are not taught to be instructors. We are not taught to be teachers. We are taught to be subject matter experts. So we really have to sort of work together. And I know we do in my department, like work together to see like what's best for students. And we do a lot of professional development, but that's not always the case. And so I think a lot of professors don't realize that that's making it very inaccessible for most students. Like I don't look in 5 places for information. When we were in college, it was like, here's a syllabus. Like there was no flexibility, right? Like your 3 tests are on these days. And unless an earthquake happens that splits the school in half, there's tests are on those days, right? And so I think that with technology, we just our ability to focus on things. Like I'm guilty too. Like I said, I'll be watching a video. I'm like, oh, that's 5 minutes. I'm like, really, Tara? Like you used to be able to sit down for 5 hours. So I definitely think that, and I talk to my friends my age, and we all are having that issue of like executive functioning on our own. Like that piece of organization is hard, or because of that, the fact that anyone can find you at any given time. Like I'm sure you feel this way too. Like I'll be really into something and an email will pop up and then I'll have to look for some information or my phone will ring or something like that. And it's something that needs to be answered now. 15 minutes later, I go back. I have no idea what I was talking about. Even when writing my own book, I really struggled in sitting down and working and then being able to go back to it. I'm in the editing process. I'm still struggling. So I think it's just that now with technology, there's so much that it makes time management and planning and organization really difficult.
That makes so much sense. I think about the lack of distract because I had plenty of distractions. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
it's there's TV, there's there's the car,
yeah,
there's having to walk across campus. Yeah, I think
yeah.
oh my gosh, the things they have as distractions today. I had this conversation with my sons when they were in college. I said, you know, the stuff you got that you have access to, and now it's even worse.
Hmm.
I see it as worse because it can just keep them going different directions. It's funny because some of the stuff you were talking about made me think about. I used to complain about the professors in my doctoral work where they had you had to go buy these duplicated things over in the duplication room or the office or whatever, and it's like, really, I got to go over there. Yes, and it's like, and so you go over there and you say, I'm here for Professor so and so, and they'd have, I'd get there'd be like five, duplicated packages that you had to buy or something like this for one professor. And you're like, oh my gosh, didn't have enough with just the books. Now we got to do these duplicated,
They have all
right?
these packets.
Right. And I think now though, between a Google Drive and a D2L drive and whatever, you want to name all these different areas in which they got to make sure they check because the assignment might be there, or they have to upload it into this one and download this other activity out of this one. And whoa, yeah, it's like, yeah.
No, for sure. And I think also like the loss of color coding, like you were talking about, like I have the students that we work with on executive functioning. Like I'm like, I know you're gonna fight me on this, but I really want you to get a red folder and a red notebook for this class. And I want you to get a green. And they're like, I just type my notes. I'm like, well, we're gonna print them out and put them in that folder, right? Because it's a different, like you're keeping everything organized or making folders on your computer. This is spring 2026. This is this class, this class, this class, this class, so that you can stay organized. Because I know everyone that I work with will tell you I have 29 tabs open at any given time.
That's funny.
So I'm also like, I don't want to lose that one bit of information that I had, even though, my MacBook says everything. But yeah, I mean, I think like staying organized is really difficult. Like I'll pin something in my email and then like 2 months later, I'm like, wow, was I saving that? Like so yeah, like I think it was just much simpler when we were in school to just know when things are due, and there wasn't a lot, and you turned it in on paper, you went and printed it out. And I think that now it's just very difficult having, like you said, a lot of ways of submission, a lot of ways of keeping up with things. It just makes it harder.
Most definitely, and it's and it and I think about the different ways that I learned to procrastinate. I can only imagine in this world that it's like, well, if I know I can get this done by this time and this done by that time, and if I set this alarm for that, I mean, I would have loved being able to take back in time if I could go in a time machine back to when I'm in undergraduate school and take with me the ability to have a usable Google Drive or something like this, with the folders and color coding them and things like that. Oh, I would have been in so much better off
Better
place.
shape.
Yes.
See, so there's like I don't want to all sound negative, like there's no good things about technology, because there is. It's just also looking at the disadvantages, right, of that constant communication, that constant people just, things coming from everywhere.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like it gets very overwhelming. And I think, but I also like we have to train that now because it's going to be in the job world. There's no job world now that's not going to require all of those things. So it's learning how to be able to manage it.
So important. And it's funny because you make me think about a couple of different things as we progress and talk about some of this where you think about just I got to mention this. All right, so I'll delete this little gap, but I have to mention this because you were talking before about people knowing where you are. Today, the students have developed different ways to, kind of fool the the phone or the whoever's watching the phone in its app. Oh, look, he's hanging out at the library right now, and no, actually, that phone is with,
Another
somebody,
person.
another
Yeah.
person who's hanging out at the library.
Yeah. That
Um,
life 360 and things. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It's like.
I mean, I'm sure we would have been just as smart.
I would think so too. It's just funny though when you when you think about what they're. I experienced this not too long ago when I realized that a friend of mine, as we're walking on this college campus, we're there to visit our children, all right, because it's like a parents' weekend or something like this. And um, we're walking across, and he's checking his phone, and he says, "Boy, there's some dead spots on this campus." And I said, "Yeah, I know there are." And I said, "I found that out over in this area up here, but if you just wait a little bit." And he says, and I said, "So what, are you trying to make a phone call or something?" He goes, "Oh no." He goes, "I'm looking at trying to keep track of my daughter here. She's somewhere." I'm like, "What?" And he started talking about this, and I'm like, I just had to shut up because I'm like, I cannot. I
No, my parents had no idea what I was doing any day of any week.
Same here.
So
As soon as I
that's
left
probably
the
better. Probably better.
There you go. As soon as I left the driveway, there's like, nope, nope. And on college campus, forget that noise. That's the,
They just had to trust us, right? They just had to trust that we were doing what they were like. My parents never even asked to see my grades. Like my parents knew I was hard enough on myself to just be like, if she
yeah,
doesn't do well enough for her standards, she'll be upset. So, they didn't even have to worry about that or ask.
wild
So
stuff. This wild stuff. All right. Let me try that one again. So one of the things I'd like you to think about here is, could you share a strategy or two that parents can use today to help their students build, stronger study habits?
sure. Are we talking like before they leave, like something that they can work on together
Yes,
or
something they could
okay.
work on together before they leave.
Okay. So one of the things that my students love the most is body doubling. So that's basically like you're struggling to get something done, so you ask someone else to come over and just sit with you and make you do it. Like a lot of my students are like, hey, like I need to get my laundry done. I never get it done unless my friend comes over and like she's talking to me and I'm folding the laundry and I'm doing everything, right? Same thing works for school. It's why, when I was in college, I think I worked so well in the library because everybody else was there doing their work. It made me feel like, oh, I got to be doing this, right? Um, Even when we work with our students, in our executive functioning, consulting, tutoring, whatever you're going to call it, we're there with them doing those things. And so for a parent, it could simply be like, I remember when I was young, like we would sit around the table and do our homework, right? Instead of, we were never in our rooms doing whatever because we didn't even have a computer up there. But sitting with my mom while she did her checkbook while I did my homework, right? While someone else is doing something, it helps you be able to focus on doing that. Like there's even these things now called like admin parties where people that are like my age and older, like literally everybody brings a task they've been putting off and they all do it because the other person's doing it. Like if I need to renew my passport, maybe my other person needs to get a new life insurance, whatever, life insurance plan, like whatever. And it makes people do it because it makes you do it because they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
So body doubling is what we refer to for that. And students do really well with it. I think because especially, during COVID and post COVID, we were so isolated that all those distractions are especially there, right? Like if I'm doing something with one of my friends, I'm less likely to be looking at my phone the whole time because she's going to be like, why are you doing that? Or one of my friends who knows me well will be like, stop touching that phone. So, so yeah, I mean, the body double is a huge one. So I would say, being involved with that. And I would also say for parents, like advocating and being there for your kids, but also teaching them that skill, right? Like I always tell the story of how one of my first weeks at college, being from a super small town, I go to Florida State, I park my car at the stadium. I lost my car, no idea. Like I was not paying attention, no
Wow.
idea where I was. And like I called my mom and she's like, okay, Tara, what would you like me to do? As I am, 4.5 hours away. I'm like, I don't know, mom, like, what do I do? And she was like, okay, well, we're going to find this person and we're going to do this, right? But in that way, she was helping me and being there for me, but telling me, I can't do this for you. Like, we have to figure it out. Also, you'll think this is funny. I also got to Georgia a few times and was like, what am I doing in Georgia? And my mom would literally pull out the map when I called her and be like, okay, what do you post? I'm still terrible with directions. Thank God for ways and things like that. But yeah, like helping your student and telling them, but also teaching them how to self-advocate because it's going to be such a big skill for them to have when they leave.
So important. And that's so cool what you're talking about, because that's what a neat skill to have to think about, sitting with someone that's, they put pressure on you to do that work. It's, I like that. Awesome, awesome advice right there. Uh,
Tip for you at home, Steven.
well, I'm already thinking about some ways that I never thought that there was a name for it, but there are things that already, if I'm sitting working with somebody else, and no matter whatever they're working on, it's just guilting me into sit down and get it done. It's like,
Yes, for sure. For sure.
I like that. All right. Can you share a success story of a neurodivergent student who thrived once they had the right support? Because I think that seems to be a lot of what you're talking about. You get that right thing that's going to help them be
Yeah, I
successful.
mean, gosh, I have a bunch, but let me see. Um, I had a student who, when I first started working with him, had started college during COVID. So had been distance learning for the first time. I think he finished high school during COVID, like one of those students who never got to do graduation and stuff. I feel so sad for that generation. But and so started college during COVID and was a STEM major and was really struggling. And when we started working together, he was on academic probation. He wasn't doing well. So we had like a difficult conversation about, is this really what you want? And he was like, no. Okay. So he was a computer science major. So we changed to business. And then this particular college, why we started that was they had like a cybersecurity minor or something. So he became a major in business, did really well, started using his accommodations, which he wasn't using, started asking for help. Just sort of classes went back on campus, which was better for him. We came up with a color coding system with post-its. So he had like red, this is on fire, I have to turn it in. Like yellow, okay, I have a day or two. Like green, I got to finish, right? And it was all like, even I was like, I could see something, in the corner, and I'm like, what is that? He's like, that's my meet with Tara on Monday post So,
Awesome.
but his wall became like this wall of post it. It was something that really worked for him. That worked for him. So he changed to business. He graduated, and he's currently in law school
Nice.
for wants to be a cyber lawyer. So ended up being able to do what he started in a roundabout way and something that worked better for him. And the first year he wasn't happy with his law school. So we worked on transfer last summer, and now he's in a different law school that he's much happier at. So
That's excellent. Appreciate
yeah,
you.
I'm super proud of him.
You should be. That's cool. Appreciate you sharing that too. Could you provide some tips for a student who is experiencing academic anxiety? And what I'm talking about now is someone who is in, post K-12 world.
Like anxiety, are you referring to like testing anxiety, or like just I'm feeling overwhelmed, I don't know what to
I'm
do
feeling
anxiety?
overwhelmed.
Okay. So yeah, and in that case, I would say always use there's so many services that are on campus, right? That you can access. So I would say always look for your student success center or whatever is on campus, because those people are going to be able to point you in the right direction and help you themselves, right? I would also say ask for help. So if you're struggling in a class, like I think students are so trained to be intimidated by professors, but I can tell you from my experience, I really want to help you if you just tell me how I can help you. But if I don't know what's happening and you just stop coming to class and you don't answer my emails and things like that because you're overwhelmed, I can't do anything to help. Counseling centers on campus are great for how to deal with that. And once again, like studying with your friends, get that group from the very beginning. Because when you can't figure out a problem and you're sitting there staring at it for 3 hours, like you're so frustrated, you're so tired, right? But if you can just be with a friend and be like, hey, like, can you show me how to do this? Or do you know how to do this? Or maybe we can figure it out together. I think like not isolating is a huge one. And yeah, asking for help is to me the biggest tip. If you're struggling with chunking everything together, then yeah, start with the smallest task. What do I have to get done first? Like I do that in my natural life. Like I'm tired in the morning, or actually I'm great in the morning, like 3 o'clock, but I want to take a nap. So in the morning I get all my stuff done, and then at 3 I save like those little tasks that I can, cross it off my list, get that serotonin, like, and then keep going with my day. So yeah, asking for help and talking to your professors, making friends that can help you in those situations, because even if a student says they're not, every college student feels anxiety, right? We know that we did when we were in school. Like, and nobody knows what you're going through like your friends do or your peers. So I definitely think, looking for services on campus, and then, like I said, we're executive functioning coaches, look for one of those if it's option. But I definitely think making a list and checking stuff off. And also, we all know that we make a million lists. I don't know if you do this, Stephen, but I make a list that I never achieve anything. Sometimes I have to ask myself, like, how important is this for today, Tara? If this is something a month away, like you're not going to get it done today. So do we really need to put it on the list? Because we feel like a failure when we don't finish that list, right? So I think and as college students, it's like I always say college is like a social experiment, right? There's all these rules that don't really work in the work world. Like we can't ever turn anything late, right? Like you're working at all hours, right? There's just different rules there, and yeah, I think just I have no idea where I was going with that. So
All is good. All is good. It's you were talking about helping to reduce that anxiety that
yeah,
you feel being
yeah, I
overwhelmed.
think yeah, just every student feels overwhelmed and being able to tell people, that you're overwhelmed and asking for help and making things shorter and more concise and asking yourself, if you know I'm not going to do that now, like let's just put it off until next week when there's more time to get something done. But we all want to get something done for next week, but that's just sometimes not what works when we have a million things to do.
So important, so important. I think that great advice. Uh, all right, so I got a scenario for you. If you were the
Okay.
closing keynote at a conference where the audience is composed of parents and students who are going to be transitioning to college, what is something that you would tell them that you would want them talking about when they left the auditorium? So in other words, you've come to the conclusion and you've said something there at the end that they're going to be talking about when they leave.
Okay. So I would say be honest with yourself about what you need going into college, right? In terms of, we used to have like those college 101 courses, right? Or I know I had to take that at college, like the first 4 weeks, and we don't have that anymore. So I would say, like, your parents have always helped you with your email, with your learning management system, with your IEP, with everything. And if they're not going to do that anymore, what's a system you can create so that you are prepared to go to college, whatever that looks like, would be my biggest thing. So making a list of, do you have access to your email learning management system? Do you know where everything is on campus? Do you have a map? Have you signed up for orientation? Right? All these things that are super important that a lot of times we meet with students and they don't have any classes, they don't even know they had an email, right? Like it's sort of, and from the parent perspective, like you're going to have to help them with that. Most of them don't know how to do that. So, also being aware that this is happening so that you can help them. So from that perspective.
That's
And I guess
awesome.
from a professor perspective, um, also be aware that they're not going to know what's happening either the first day. So, being, I think, to a little more lenient on at least at the beginning and explaining the rules so everybody knows the rules.
I love it. That's you made me you started making me think about boy, I wish I'd had some of this advice a long time ago because there's some things that not being honest with myself about certain behaviors that I had, and I don't mean like really out there wild behaviors or something like this, but I mean simply the idea that oh, the class is Monday, Wednesday, and an hour on Friday. That means on Tuesday and Thursday, when I'm focused on these other classes, the other class is out of sight, out of mind type thing. And that almost did me in. It's like,
Oh yeah, cramming is like cramming. I always tell students too, I'm like, please, like even in my own chemistry classes, I'm like, do not stay up all night. I have stayed up all night and then you just become a crazy person, right?
right, oh yeah,
Like my boyfriend in college, when I would stay up all night, he would be like, you're being crazy. You need to sleep and like eat something. Cause yeah, like when we don't sleep, we literally are torturing ourselves, right?
oh yeah,
And you get up early and you're studying, and then like during the test, like you just brain doesn't work as well. But like, and I feel like those kind of things were like rewarded when I was in college. Oh, you stayed up all night. I did too, you know? And now I
oh
tell
yeah.
my students, I'm like, please don't stay up all night. Please eat breakfast. Like, how many days did you go to college without breakfast? Right? It would be like 1 o'clock and I would be starving because I didn't get up 10 minutes earlier and make myself something to eat
That's
or even
funny.
have a Pop Tart, you know?
Yes,
So I feel like, but yeah, like that advice of, oh, you have so much free time that is not really free time, but that you've told yourself it's free time,
right.
that you really need to be okay. On Sunday, I gotta make my whole list of this week, and then what am I gonna do Monday, and then etc. Right? Instead of, oh, it's Tuesday night and I have a paper due tomorrow. Let me start like frantically writing. So
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Right. Oh, you bring back memories now. And I didn't have laptop or email or any of that stuff, and that's something that I can only think about because dating myself here, but I remember when email starts first appearing, and that's why they can't see it, but I was smiling when you were talking about not even realizing you had a college email. So when I'm doing graduate work, they tell you that you had this email. It's like, well, how do I get it? It's like,
Yes,
yeah,
like it was sent to some other email that you have
right,
to remember, like
right.
you had in high school, right? Like I think the total tangent, but like the whole transcripts thing is insane to me. Like every job I've ever applied to has wanted like my transcripts from Florida State, my transcripts from Tennessee, my transcripts from England, which don't even exist because
Right.
they don't have classes. There's no transcript. So I had to have a special transcript from the University of Sussex that they stamped on a piece of paper to
Wow.
say that I have my PhD. And I still have to turn it in anytime I get a new job. So then I have to try to find my Florida State email and then this other email. It's insane. So like people with my Sussex transcripts, I'm like, these are gold. Do not ever lose it because I don't know that I'll ever get another. I'm like, today, like what is that? You could call the school and be like, did she graduate? Right? Like
Right, right.
it's such a crazy, in some ways, technology has gone so far. And in other ways, you're like, what? And yeah, like that's a lot of my students struggle with that. Like when they go to like they have an appeal or something and they're trying to figure something out from high school, and we spend like 2 hours trying to figure out where it got sent in high school and changing all their passwords, and like it's crazy to me.
That would be that. I can only imagine how nuts that could get because
I
it's
also was like you, but you brought up a memory for me uh, about like back then, right? And when we were in school, I did have a laptop and we had email and stuff, but all the journals weren't online like they are now. If there wasn't as many. So I remember like in the panic of, oh my God, I haven't done that. I need to go find this book at the library and trying to make sure like no one else had checked it out that was in my class, right? There's no Amazon where we could just get a book.
right.
Like you're literally like, oh my God, I gotta find you're in every it wasn't Barnes and Noble back then. There was like Walden Books or something,
Yeah,
right?
there
Like
you
you're literally trying to find this book that does not exist or that someone else has at the library, like running around staring at people.
That's
So,
funny. That's
and
funny.
now like there's just information at their fingertips. So I think that's funny.
Really is. It's and I do. Oh my gosh, you're killing me here because like one of the when I was doing my working on my dissertation, I'm checking out books that hadn't been checked out in forever, right? And I'm on the second floor. There should be a table with my name, you know, emblazoned on it because
In memoriam of your
yes,
studies
exactly.
of your
And
studies there.
exactly. And it's funny because uh, when you check out these books, they're now nothing against anybody in undergraduate school now, but when you got to be more understanding of the people working on their doctoral stuff because sometimes you need that book a little longer than
Yeah.
the undergrad who goes, oh, so and so has somebody has this book out and I need to look at it, but they don't really because they're just deciding, so they zap you. The University of Georgia used to have this whole little thing where they could put in a request for that book and you'd have to turn it in within 3 days.
Oh
It's like,
no. And you're having like a panic.
yes, exactly. Because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm 79 miles away from campus. It's like I got to, you
Oh
know,
gosh, that's funny, but understand. And we were talking about the recordings or whatever. Like I
yes.
often say tape. I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna tape it, and people look at me and like, record it, record it.
Nice.
Sorry, I'm old. I'm dating myself too.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. All right. So, Tara, if someone wanted to follow up and connect with you and or learn more, where would you send them?
so our website is innovativecollegiateconsultants.com. That has all of our socials, which we have tips for parents and things like that. You can book a consultation with me on the website. We always do a free consultation with any parents or students interested. And then that'll also have information about my book, which will probably be out this summer.
Very nice. Very nice. You have to reach back out to me. We'll have to talk when
I
you get the book
will.
out.
I'm
All
gonna,
right.
yeah, and I'll send it to you. And I'd love to know your thoughts from a former high school principal.
Cool. That'd be awesome. Love to do that. All right. Last question for you. And it goes like this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
Okay, so I have four. I thought about this
Nice.
question because I was like, I can't just give one. Um, my third grade teacher, her name is Mrs. Slaughter, and then I ended up having her for fourth and fifth grade because small town. And I don't know, she was just the first person that ever, like, I think, teacher that made me feel really good and believed in me. And last year in the summer, I had an event in my hometown for something, and she showed up. Did not know who she was. She was like, Tara, do you remember me? And I was like, no, I'm so sorry, and I looked at her, and she was like, is this a Slaughter? I was like, oh my God, like, went over and gave her a huge hug, and she saw my mom, and she was literally like, you were one of my favorite students and I couldn't not see you. And I haven't seen her since I was in high school.
Wow.
So that was quite shocking. And then I have two teachers in high school that are actually married now. They are not at the time, but they were Mr. and Mrs. Walsworth now. But they were teachers in high school. Same thing. Like I was really struggling and thinking I was intelligent or that I wasn't, doing things right. I wasn't good enough. I was always following in my older brother's footsteps, things like that. And they really made me feel different and smart and that I could leave my small town and be successful. Um, and then my PhD supervisor, who I still love so much to this day, which most people don't say that, but he is like my other dad. I love him very much. And same thing. Like I was really struggling in graduate school at Tennessee, and I was like, I don't belong here. I'm not smart enough to be here. This isn't for me. And I was really not happy in the research group I was in. And he was like, I believe in you. You want to go to England? And I said, you're insane. And I left, and 3.5 years later, I became Dr. Williams, and I owe a lot of it to John and his belief in me in the first place. So thank you
That's,
to all of them.
that's so cool. Thank you for sharing those stories. Those are
Of course.
amazing. I love it. Tara, thank you so much for talking with us about Innovative Collegiate Consultants, working with neurodivergent and neurotypical students, executive functioning skills, transition to college, building better study habits, and tips for transitioning to college. You have an awesome focus. I love it. Wishing you the best
Thank
in
you.
all you do.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Steven.
You do the same. So hang on just a second. Don't go anywhere. And I hope your time's okay because I'm going to stop
You're fine.
recording here. All
I
right.
just